Alright guys, welcome in, welcome back, I should say. Actually, no, this is biology. I just did a chemistry video. Today we're going to go over Darwin's natural selection worksheet. And what I want you guys to understand is Darwin basically said that evolution happens in 4 different steps, right? First, there's overproduction. What that means is you over-reproduce, or basically you reproduce and you have offsprings or babies. Next, there's also variation. What that means is there's always going to be variations in your species. So, kind of like in humans, some people have green eyes, some people have blue eyes. In bears, some people have thick coats, some bears have medium coats and then thin coats as well. Just like that beetle lesson that I gave you guys on the window about the green beetles and then the yellow beetles as well. All right. Next, survival of the fittest basically means who dies and who lives, right? Sorry about the alarm. Coffee shop. All right. After that, it's going to be successful reproduction. So those individuals who live will reproduce. So what I want you guys to do is read these scenarios, and I'll read these out loud, and I'm going to go over the first 2, and then I'm pretty sure you can do the other 2 by yourself. But if you guys have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me during work time or advisory or email or whatever it is that you guys would do. All right. So this first scenario says there are 2 types of worms: worms that eat at night, so nocturnal, and worms that eat during the day. I'm going to underline key facts here, or key points I should say. The birds only eat during the day, so they only eat the diurnal ones. Okay. The nocturnal worms are in their burrows during this time. Each spring, when the worms reproduce, they have about 500 babies, but only 100 of these 500 ever become old enough to reproduce. So, overproduction. Let's go over that. Please write these in sentences. I know I'm kind of doing this, but it's because I have limited time. So, 100 out of 500 will survive. So that is overproduction. That would be the example here, right? Variation. Well, variation in worms, you have diurnal and nocturnal. They're both worms. It's just some eat during the day and some eat during the night. Okay? Survival of the fittest. Who will die and who will live? Well, in this scenario, the birds will eat diurnal worms, so nocturnal will survive. Next step, successful reproduction. Who would be most likely to reproduce? Well, the nocturnal ones, because they're not the ones that are getting eaten, will reproduce. And then guess what the population of worms is going to look like over 30 or 40 years? Most of them are going to be nocturnal, right? Perfect. All right, see how easy that is? This seems more complicated than what it actually is. I just wanted to make sure I went over these 4 steps to evolution or natural selection. All right, you guys are doing great so far. The one person that's watching this video. All right, perfect. Number 2, there are 3 types of polar bears. One with thick coats, key point. Nope, I thought the video stopped. One with thin coats, and then ones with medium coats. It is fall soon to be winter. The temperatures are dropping rapidly. The bears must be kept warm, or they will freeze to death. Many of the bears have had about 2 cubs each, but due to extreme temperatures, many mothers only have 1 cub left. So, overproduction. Okay. So, bears produce 2 cubs, right? More than likely, one will survive, right? Now, so 2 cubs, 1 survives. Okay, perfect. Hopefully you guys can hear me over the music. Variation, well, there are 3 types of fur. Okay. Please list them when you actually go through this. Survival of the fittest, who will die, who will live. Okay, perfect. Here we go. Thin coats and medium coats will die because of the cold. Right? So the cubs that have mothers that have thin coats will not have enough warmth to survive the winter. Same thing with the medium coats. But guess what? the thick coats will survive. Will S, right? Will S for survive. Will survive because they have enough warmth from their mothers to survive the winter. Okay, perfect. I want you guys to do number 3 on your own. If you guys have any questions, please do not hesitate to ask. And now there's this sweet scenario over here with the giraffe, and I'll just go ahead and read it with you guys and explain what you have to do. So Pedro believes that giraffes have long necks because they have stretched their necks to try to reach food that is high on the trees, right? Since the parent had stretched its neck, it passed the long neck onto its offspring. This is scenario number 1. Ryan believes that giraffes have long necks because the ones with long necks were able to reach the food and those with short necks could not and died. The long-necked giraffes reproduced and soon all of their giraffes had long necks. Which one of these arguments fits better with Darwin's theory of natural selection? Please explain your reasoning in at least 3 sentences, okay? All right. Thank you guys for tuning in. The next video that we will watch, let's see what we got for, oh, heck yeah. Next video that we're gonna watch is this one, right? Perfect. Okay, so let's go through these together. I want you guys to pause this video and I want you guys to read the background on your own. So we're gonna go over these 3 topics, bam, 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 convergent evolution, divergent evolution, and coevolution. Okay, long story short, convergent evolution is, well, I'll read it out for you. The process in which 2 different lineages evolve a similar characteristic independently of one another. This often occurs because both lineages face similar environmental challenges and selected features. So an example of this, and I really want you guys to write this down, what this is saying is 2 different species have similar traits. So let's look at all of the desert animals. So snakes and squirrels, what color are they most likely going to be? Well, they're going to be a tan color because it helps them survive. So that's an example of convergent evolution. Right? Divergent evolution, the process in which one common lineage evolves due to differences between species. This can lead to the formation of new species. This is typically a result of genetic drift and natural selection. So basically, you start off with an example of this was the beetle example that I gave to you guys on the window, where you have green beetles survive, but because the environment changes, they evolve into yellow beetles over time. The population does. So that's an example of divergent. Remember, diverge means to split. So think of this. You start off with one species and then all of a sudden environment changes and you end up with 2 different species, right? Or 3 or 4. Coevolution, process where 2 or more species reciprocally affect each other's evolution. Coevolution is likely to happen when different species have close ecological interactions with one another. So think of this way. So flowers evolved sweeter fruit to attract bees, right? So therefore the bees had to evolve to carry the fruit. So this is basically when 2 species are working side to side over the course of millions of years to evolve together, almost to benefit one another, right? And I'll go over those traits in class, and I'll show you guys several images and examples, okay? So now let's go over what analogous structures are, okay? All right, so using your lecture notes and textbooks to find the following terms. Here we go. Analogous structures is when 2 species have developed traits that have similar functions. Think of an analogous as an analogy between 2 different things, right? In English. So an example of this would be the wings of birds and insects. Now, birds and insects are not super closely related, and their wings don't look exactly the same, right? But they both function the same. So they both have the same function, right? So you could say that wings and birds, or I'm sorry, the wings of birds and the wings of insects serve the same function, right? That's an analogous structure. Let's see. What type of evolution do you think typically illustrates analogous structure? Explain. Let's see. Here we go. It would be convergent evolution. Remember, I'm not going to write this out because my hand is getting tired, so I'll dialogue it. So remember, convergent evolution is when you have two different lineages evolve similar characteristics, all right? So two different lineages, so birds and insects develop the same characteristics, right? Even though they're different species. Homologous structure. I will write this down. My neck is hurting. All right. Homo means the same. So this is basically the same... similar species develop similar traits. And for this, I want you guys to think of the humans and apes, or humans and gorillas. Skulls. If you look at the skull of a human and the skull of a gorilla, they look similar because we are very closely related, right? And that is a homologous structure, right? Perfect. So let's see here. So what type of evolution do you think typically illustrates homologous structures? Well, this one's a bit of a tricky one, right? Because they're related, right? So when we do this, let's see here, which one would be the best example, or which one would be the most likely of the evolutions, right? So let's see here. So let's see. So divergent evolution, right? You start off with a common ancestor. So there was a common ancestor between the humans and the gorillas, but eventually they started to diverge and form new species, right? They're still similar, but they're forming new species. So for this one, it would be divergent evolution, right? All right, vestigial structures. Here we go. For this particular one, vestigial structures are structures that don't serve a purpose anymore. Like the appendix, or you could also say like, hair on humans really doesn't have a purpose anymore. Back then, it used to provide us cover from the sun, but now it doesn't really do much, right? Because we don't need it. And then also male nipples don't really serve a purpose anymore, right? Perfect. So what type of evolution do you think illustrates, this should say vestigial structure? This is also going to be divergent evolution, right? Because you have a common ancestor, all right? Let's just go back to the gorilla example and the apes. So gorillas and then humans all evolved from a common ancestor, right? And that common ancestor had hair, right? And eventually it passed down that hair to the next generations and the next species. However, remember, gorillas' skulls started to change and their bodies started to change a little bit. Humans, same thing. Their skulls and their bodies started to change, but they still retained hair, even though they don't need it, right? So that's why we would do it. We would label this as a divergent evolution. Okay. Perfect. All right, here we go. Let's fill out this one for you guys right here. Identify the above four-limb structures as whether they are homologous, analogous, or vestigial. I'm just going to go ahead and give this to you guys just for the sake of time. So if you look at a man and a cheetah, look at this bone structure here. They almost have the exact same bone structure and the exact same fingers, right? Look at the whale. Well, the whale, if you look at the whale, the wrist of the whale or the fin of the whale looks almost exactly like the bones of a human. Bam, bam, bam. Look at the wings of a bat, right? So you have the humerus, the radius, and the ulna. Right here, humerus, radius, and ulna. And you also have fingers as well. So I'm going to call these as homologous because, one, these are all mammals, right? And so they're all related, and they all have similar structures, right? So what evolutionary pattern is most likely to have caused these limbs to evolve in this way? It's going to be divergent evolution. Perfect. And then what I want you guys to do is, what could have caused this? Well, you have differences in the change, the change in environment is the main difference, right? Humans live on land, so therefore we need longer limbs to reach out. Cheetahs live on land, so therefore they need longer limbs as well to reach out. Whales live in the ocean, so they need longer limbs in this particular fashion to maneuver the ocean. Bats live in high altitudes. By altitude, I mean in context, they live in trees or caves, so they need to fly. So their bones are lighter and longer, right? Because they have this type of webbing that allows them to fly. Using colored pencils, color code the bones that are similar to in each animal. You guys can do that. Number the fingers or toes of each animal. You guys can do that as well. What are the similarities and differences between each part of the forelimbs? You guys can do that as well. And so I'm going to end this video right now. And if you guys have any questions, please reach out to me during class or email or advisory.